Have been asking me how I'm keeping my shit together. And I'm not thrown off by this election because Donald Trump is the truest representation of American values. There are a lot of people who are still very sad. All I can feel in this moment is absolute power. So much of the United States' power comes from its lies, comes from how it obfuscates, comes from how it hides. But because Donald Trump was not only elected once under dubious conditions, but he was able to win a second time after somebody else got in there. And that means two things. The first thing is that there are people who are absolutely clear about what Donald Trump is and decided to vote for that. So that should send a clear indication to us of what I've been saying, which is that Donald Trump is not a cause. He's a symptom. He is the product of the problem. And so while he is a vile representation of that problem and he's tangible, we can confront it. And that's easier to confront than institutions and systems and norms and beliefs and iconography. He is a product of a belief system and value system that is widely shared by many people in the country. That means defeating him in this election doesn't actually defeat the problem. And we're stuck in a cycle because very soon somebody else just like Donald Trump or worse could come up. The second thing that means is though, is that the people who've been voting based on America's representations of itself, based on America's aspirations and not the actual values, are being forced to reckon with the reality that this isn't the America that they thought it was or that they hoped it was or that they thought it was half and half. And now they're seeing that the forces that either want to maintain the status quo, which is the system that produced Donald Trump, or wants Donald Trump, which is the vile representation that wants to go further, neither of those things are sufficient to defeat the actual problem. That's what has so many people undone. So many people are undone because they believed in America's fluff about democratic ideals and bring me your huddled masses and anyone can make it and we have this system and blah, blah, blah. The fact that Donald Trump was even allowed to run again should be the clearest indication to you that the system is not working as it's supposed to, as designed. Because how could this man be impeached twice and be credibly accused of fomenting a coup, rebellion, treason on his own government and still get elected again? The systems, the checks and balances that you think that you're voting to protect aren't working. The reason Donald Trump is able to be as successful as he's been, and I don't mean successful in like a moral sense, I mean that he's remained out of jail even though he's committed crimes. He's managed to not only get a job he was unqualified for the first time, but after he screwed it up, he got hired again. He was able to flaunt his incompetence, flaunt his lack of reading, hide his educational credentials, and still be elected. What did Van Lathan say? He can't fail enough to be a failure. He can't commit enough crimes to be a criminal. He can't lie enough to be a liar. If this don't sound like these United States to you, I don't know what history books you've been reading. In fact, I'm inclined to believe you haven't read any at all. This nation's entire identity, who it actually is premised on greed, ruthlessness, violence, hostility to difference, and arrogance. That don't sound like Trump. That don't sound like the truest expression of this country. And America can't commit enough violence to be a terrorist. America can't lie enough to be a liar. It ain't got enough corruption to be corrupt. It's the exact same ethos. As vile as he is, as much as he's disgusting and disgusts people, he is an accurate representation of this country. And because people keep trying to put a Band-Aid, for those of y'all who've been going back to my old video, you know we talked about this. Those of y'all who keep trying to put a Band-Aid on a bullet wound now have to contend with the fact that it's not a flesh wound. It's not just surface deep and it didn't go out of the other side. That thing is lodged in and we bleeding out. And so whatever version they told you you was recovering, they told you we was in remission, they told you that wound would heal on itself. People vote based on that premise. People have voted based on the aspirational version of America, the version of America that America tells people it is. This country has spent an inordinate amount of resources protecting its image. In fact, I would argue protecting America's brand is significantly more important than protecting the American people. It puts the resources into its curriculum to make sure you never learn the truth. We do fluff, patriotic stuff, Pledge of Allegiance, America the Great, all that anti-CRT hysteria is about preserving a particular image of America, whether or not it actually matches reality. We do it in our news media, the way our media is captured, the way the government leans on our media to make sure that no media that's actually critical of the United States gets widespread attention. It bans international media that is critical of the United States. It puts more money into the pageantry associated with elections than into making sure that they're actually free and fair. What? And too many people overlook those realities and say, yeah, I know we got some problems, but we just need some better people in there. Instead of realizing that these are systemic and institutional failures that a person cannot change. In fact, that people only are allowed to get access to if they expressed agreement with or are willing to be complicit in that system. These are not changes you can make by swapping out a few people. These are changes you make by stripping this government of its legitimacy and rebuilding a government of people where people are actually involved. And so because there were people, too many people, if you want my honest opinion, who took their ass to the polls to vote based on the aspirations of America, even though they don't do a whole lot in between elections to make sure that version of America actually exists, are undone. Because they've been fed those narratives, that myth, that pageantry, the iconography for so long, they believed it would prevail at the polls. They don't realize that that is a marketing pitch. That is a PR program that does not match reality. So no, it did not prevail at the votes because it is not anchored in reality. What prevailed at the polls is what is anchored in reality. So my hope is that while everybody's feeling distraught and depressed and scared, my hope is that folks will now have to reckon with the reality of what this country is, that it is nowhere near its aspirations. Not only is it nowhere near its aspirations, it's not really interested in achieving them. And figure out what we do from there. They can't vote based on those aspirations anymore because the facade is cracked. And if you still believing in it, baby, we gonna need something more than glasses for you. And while everybody else feels, I don't know, like I said, distraught based on this, I feel powerful. I have derived nothing but power, internal power, from this. Because one of the things it is so hard for people who study history to reckon with is the facade, the distance between the facade and the reality, especially when there are so many well-meaning people who consider themselves intelligent and informed that are still preoccupied with the facade, think they can save it, think it's preservable, think it exists, right? And since the facade is cracked, now more and more people see the reality for what it is. More and more people will have to contend with it. And although it may seem scary, knowing the reality of your opponents and them not being able to hide behind PR and marketing is a strength, You can respond adequately to what you know. Too many people have responded inadequately to the American empire because they didn't know. Now people know. I hope people know. I mean, people got to know because that's what they feeling. It just remains to be seen if whether or not people are going to rise to meet this challenge or whether or not they're still going to try to use the mechanisms that failed them this time and will continue to fail them because they're premised on a facade that does not actually exist. There is power in knowing the truth about your opponent, in that truth being laid bare, and them not being able to hide behind the propaganda that has given them legitimacy for centuries. It may feel daunting once you see the reality of what that is, but knowing it is nonetheless a form of power because you can use it strategically to your advantage. I need y'all to recognize y'all are not fighting for an okay America that we can improve. Y'all are fighting against a deeply, deeply bigoted, filled with avarice, violent country that does not care about you or anybody else. It cares about domination and profit. It is Donald Trump. I need you to start thinking of America, not every single one of its people, but America as an institution, as an ideal, like Donald Trump. And I want you to think about how you engage with that. Donald Trump is not an aberration. Donald Trump is representative. If there was an effigy I could create, it would look like him. Plastic, fake, obsessed with appearances, obsessed with surface superficial bullshit, hostile to difference. He is the effigy. He is the country. This is what you need to contend with. So I know it's hard. I know it doesn't feel good, but I need you to start deriving power from that reality, from that reckoning, from that awareness, and from the fact that now you have a lot more people who are in on this awareness too.